a very, very special car builder, Mr. Dave Richardson. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into building the RCEs.
Well, if we go right back to the start of my career, I studied automotive engineering at university. Following on from that, I worked in professional motorsport and also in the automotive industry. But my heart's sort of always been with oval racing. My dad's always been around the Inca race track, so I've always been into oval racing. So it was sort of the natural progression for me. It's sort of, you know, my love of oval racing combined with my knowledge of automotive engineering, and I was able to combine the two and make a career out of it for myself.
Yeah, so I mean, when you came on the scene with this revolutionary chassis, what actually gave you the idea to do that?
Well, you know, I sort of came at stock car racing from sort of a different angle. You know, I had a background in professional motorsport and an understanding of how cars are constructed for, you know, the sort of cars that you see in the wider show here. The cars are much more tailored towards racing, and they don't really have to cater for the contact element. So what I tried to do was to build a car that dynamically was as good as possible, but still taking into consideration the fact that it has to take a knock from time to time.
Yeah, and I mean, you've done that especially well with the inboard shockers, and it's something everybody's followed suit, haven't they?
Yeah, there's definitely a trend now with the inboard front suspension. I mean, you can achieve the same things with inboard and outboard, but what running the inboard suspension does is it saves you shocks. I mean, I don't think any of my customers have ever suffered a damaged shock absorber when they've hit the wall or received a crash in that way.
Would you say there's any difference in geometry or handling or steering situations out?
Well, you can achieve bad geometry with inboard and outboard suspension, so, you know, there's obviously an extra link in the mechanism, but, you know, providing you know what you're trying to achieve, then, you know, you can achieve the same with both.
And have you actually tailored the cars for Gordon Moody?
Definitely not. I mean, Gordon came on the scene and people became aware of RCE in 2006, but what they didn't realise is for 2 or 3 years before that I'd been building cars, and some close friends of mine were racing cars that we'd worked on. Chad Harris and Tim Pullum are both racing what are now RCE cars. Before that, you know, they didn't necessarily have the budget to compete at the highest level. But when Gordon came on board, obviously he was a different level of in the amount of money you could put into the sport, and also his ability as a driver. So that naturally allowed me to develop the car and take the car to the next level.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously if we went through into the halls, we would see the Formula Ones, the Williamses and the Red Bulls and what have you, and the sort of data that they can download is phenomenal. But with a stock car, you haven't got that. So were you able to get any input from the drivers of how it's handling and what's happening with the chassis as they're driving?
You definitely get, you know, different drivers are able to give you a different amount of feedback. What we have in stock car racing, which is quite unique to stock car racing, is as an engineer you can stand on the side of the track and you can see everything that's going on. You can see the inputs that the driver's making with the steering wheel, you can see the wheels are open on the cars, so you can see a lot of what the driver's trying to achieve and how the car's reacting, and if the car's reacting how they want it to, or if it's not reacting how they want it to. So I can normally get sort of 75 to 80% of what I need to know simply from watching the car, and then use the driver to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, well, we've seen the technical advancement of stock cars over the years, especially Formula 2 seem to be taking leaps and bounds in technology. Do you think we'll ever get to the stage of where we are with Formula 1s, F2s and what have you, where we would have onboard computers that could then send straight to you in the pits and see what's going on with the geometry and everything else?
I don't think that's really the way anybody wants stock car racing to go. You know, stock car racing is a relatively budget formula, and I think everybody pretty much unanimously wants to keep it like that. So it'd be very easy to spiral out of control if we went down that route. But you know, there are always improvements that can be made within the sort of scope of the formula as we know it now.
Yeah, well, you've brought the cars on in leaps and bounds in innovation. So where do we go from here?
Well, I'm certainly going to keep moving forwards. You know, if we go back to 2006, when we first sort of broke onto the scene and everybody became aware of RCE, there was a big gap between ourselves and our competitors. Everybody's sort of, you know, catching up now, and the competitors are definitely a lot closer than they used to be. But it's just about measured progression for myself. We've got plenty of new ideas for the car, but you know, it's just a case of controlling when we release those onto the market.
So any chance that you'll tell us some of those ideas?
No, you'll be able to see it for yourself middle of the year.
No, the middle of the year, so just in time for the World Final then?
Yeah, well, obviously with the World Finals, both with the World on tarmac this year and the semis as well, obviously I've got a greater focus on the World Championship this year. Last year it wasn't so much of a focus with the World Championship being at Kings Lynn, so we'll be putting all our efforts into trying to secure the World Championship this year.
Well, Dave, that's excellent. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best for the coming season with your drivers. So, ladies and gentlemen, RCE David Richardson. Well, that concludes our interviews for now, ladies and gentlemen, but we will